So
Hi. How are you?
I'm good. It's very cold here, but I think it's actually colder where you are.
It's gross. Like it's just like you're like a little icy lollipop when you come out.
Yes. Um, Thank you so much for doing this. I have been
My pleasure.
so looking forward to it. Let me give a quick little intro for
Yeah.
people watching. So, you guys, this is Sophie Grégoire Trudeau, who is the former unofficial First Lady of Canada. But even more importantly, you are and have been a mental health advocate for years and years. You promote gender equality. You talk about the importance of emotional literacy. You wrote this incredible book, Closer Together, which I just turn to time and time again. It's part memoir, part self-help book. There are exercises in here and quizzes. It's very engaging. Every chapter is like a little snippet of your life, and then you call on this vast network of experts in the field who kind of talk through those experiences and shed light on how we can know ourselves more. And as a result, love ourselves more and love the people in our lives more, which who doesn't want that? So, right? So
Exactly.
tell me what inspired you to write this book.
Uh, I will answer your question by telling you something that happened. When I launched the book in April 2024, Gabor Mate, who is one of the world's greatest specialists on trauma and addiction, and he's a close friend of mine, he actually helped me to write, not help me to write the book, but opened me up to the scientific community and the best, experts out there because he believed in what I was doing. And he was there when I launched the book in Vancouver, Canada. He was on the stage with me, and we were in conversation. And there were hundreds of people in that room, and we had agreed on a couple of questions to open up the discussion. But he started on something completely different, and I'm like, where is he going? And he said, Sophie, he said, your book is not really just a book. And I'm like, okay. He says, knowing you and now having read it, isn't it your love letter to the world? And I started bawling, like crying in front of everybody. We hadn't even begun. I'm like, great, this is how it
Yes.
starts. But it is what Closer Together is. I have in my life as an only child, as a parent, as a daughter of parents who were very loving, but there was addiction on both sides of the family, as somebody who suffered from eating disorders and anxiety, but decided to take the healing path and to get to know myself better and wanted to share it as I went. And then the very unique co-political path that, really exposed me to incredibly unique situations from all walks of life. I came to realize I have to put this all together. I have to make it into a book and I have to offer it to the world. And it came from a place of, I love humans. I love humans. I'm super curious. So I'm very playful and I want to go to people and I see the beauty first. I have a good radar for BS. So I try to be very discerning of the people and where I bring my attention to. But you can learn from all types of people. And I still catch myself on some days thinking, no, I'm way too opinionated on this matter. And I should see it from different sides so I understand the people who represent the opposite side better. So it's a work in progress for me too. So I wrote this book from the seat of the student and the teacher because I teach yoga and meditation and wellness retreats and all that, but always falling back and also into the seat of the student and being both of those together at one same time allowed me to be able to interview some of the best experts in the world on how come we don't really know who we are. What have we done as a humanity that we're only beginning to talk about? Nervous system, reset, emotional regulation, emotional literacy. This is everywhere now, and there's such a thirst and a hunger for it. But why is it that we have to do this work right now? So this is why I wrote Closer Together, and this is why the subtitle is called Knowing Ourselves, Loving Each Other. There is no way in this life that we can learn to love each other better if we don't know how we're wired.
Totally. Why isn't this something that we talk about in school?
There's an old indigenous proverb that says, in the end, we will conserve what we love what we understand, and understand what we have been taught. Education, education, education. We will not conserve the environment or conserve a relationship or conserve, a community if we can't learn to understand it and love it. It's not going to work. We have to have this emotional attachment as human beings in order to actually care, bond, connect, and regulate and become better and evolve in a more peaceful, harmonious way, in a more balanced, harmonious way. So, balance is about coming back to center, but harmony is about accepting the wisdom of death that we carry in ourselves every single day because we're freaking mortals and we live like we're eternal creatures. And that does have a psychological impact and a physical one, at the same time. So it's fascinating to see that we live at such an inflection point in humanity's history and story where we've learned so much, but where emotional knowledge and living a more conscious life, therefore simply meaning knowing what's happening inside of us so we can affect our environment in a more harmonious way. We're really at that pivot point because we won't be able to adapt to what's happening to our planet and to people if we don't wisen up. And that's quite critical because it's putting justice, truth, and democracies in danger all at the same time. Just a little task.
I know, I was just going to say, there is a lot to break down there. I love all of it, and I find it so inspiring. And something that you talk about repeatedly is part of that. It's like living our most authentic life, and how do we do it? I think we all want to live our most authentic life, but so much stuff gets in the way. We get in the way of ourselves, society. There's societal pressures from family and friends, and all of that inhibits us from being able to live our truth. So what do we do? How do we quiet the noise? How do we let ourselves sing? Like, how do we let that inside out?
So two things. I love that you said, did you just say, how do we let ourselves sing?
Yeah, but that just came, I don't know if that's,
No, I love it.
I don't know where that came from.
No, I love it because I'll tell you, there's a quote that I wrote myself in my book that says, your emotional biography sets the musical scale of your life, but your unwounded soul writes the ultimate symphony. We've been wrongly informed that our soul can be broken. Not true. Every baby in the world comes with a soul that is unfettered, that is perfect, that cannot be broken. But the heart and the mind, they play those games, especially the mind. Now, we say we want to live our authentic lives. What does being authentic even mean today? What is authenticity? So to quote Gabor Mate, authenticity is your capacity to actually express your true needs from very early on in your life and following into your adult life without having to change your behavior to please or to be, accepted. We all do it. We all do it as kids so we can get our parents' love, and we all do it as adults so we can get our coworkers or our employers or our, the artistic directors, whatever that we're searching for to express that authenticity so that we can please. The big problem is that we live in a society that is obsessed with looks and with obsession with youth. And society and culture is actually rewarding us for self-betrayal. You change your face. Oh my God, she looks so great. She looks so youthful. We change our shapes as human beings. We dehumanize our own bodies to be loved. It is absolutely a joke to believe that we do it for ourselves. Any little 4-year-old girl who's being told you're going to have to do this to your face and this to your body in order to be happy, and we all swallow the pill of, well, yeah, I am happier. We have lost control of our bodies and our minds. And the more we allow for culture to reward us in doing this, because it asks us to look and act a certain way, the more unhappy, disconnected, lack of wisdom and lack of discernment too. And it's not our fault. We're not pointing fingers here to our sisters who do it or our brothers who do it. But at some point it has to stop. It really does. And the avatars of us that we create that now look like robots or dolls, makes me so sad because we've reached a point where we can no longer be ourselves, and it's just quite okay,
So what do we do? Do we just continue to have these conversations like we do to raise awareness so that we acknowledge the pressures that exist, but we just try to find the language and the perseverance to like push that away? Because it's hard, like
So
see on social media, all these images of people that
it's awful.
I think we should look, you know, or and it can be overwhelming. It's
Yeah.
overwhelming to me, and I'm an adult. I think about little kids and I'm like, oh, I have such empathy for them.
Yeah, it's quite damaging for young psyches. It really creates a cycle of low self-esteem and self-loathing and lack of connection to oneself. And what happens is that when we don't work on that early, it explodes later in life. So when you say teaching emotional literacy, emotional regulation, how to regulate your own mind, body, nervous system, is more important than math and French and geography, although those are all important.
Yeah.
That is at the core. Because how even you receive the math, the geography, and the French, or the philosophy, or the whatever, how you receive that as information and how you apply it and interpret it is sitting on your capacity for regulation. Are you afraid of the information that is passed on to you? Do you have the capacity for wise discernment to say, wait, that information is actually incorrect? If I go to the source, am I really well informed here? Is it an unbiased education that I'm receiving? This is huge. So to answer your question directly on what do we do exactly, it's not a one answer question. It's a lot of different things. First is teaching it early to kids. Second, I would say, is being very mindful of what we consume, because we, neurons that wire together, fire together. So whatever you consume, you become, whether it's a person, a food, a media, a movie, a magazine. Slowly and surely, we slowly become what we bring our attention to. So we have to be quite discerning. And then, the sense of community. How can we even feel strong enough in ourselves, not threatened by the difference of the other, to build community? Because this is what happens when somebody, is born in a family where that little being is being told, don't trust in your neighbors, don't trust in the world, be careful, don't go to the end of the street, don't do this, don't do that. We start this distrust in the world, and it goes against human nature. There is a fancy expression called epistemic trust, and it's one's capacity to be able to be seen and validated, so we think that we can go forward in the world feeling safe. So either you're born in a family where there's trust for others in the world, or distrust from your own parent towards your own self, and therefore, with the rest of the world. So you can imagine, Kate and other people listening, how if you move and if you live from a place of distrust, you are more fragilized emotionally, and therefore you are threatened by the difference of the other, which means you move in community way different than if you're brought up to trust and to lean into. This is not to be naive and think, oh, the world is rosy perfect and I can just, walk down the street and not look anywhere and nothing's going to happen to me. No. There is a middle ground here. There's a harmonious way of taking this in. But if you weren't raised that way, it's very difficult to relearn this. This is why teaching it early is paramount. But it's not impossible to relearn this. And trust is the most beautiful gift, sacred connection that two human beings and more can experience together. Because it actually calms the nervous system. It tells your mind, I'm okay, I'm safe, and I can go out there in the world and be who I am without having to change anything. And that's going to be just fine. So when big events or, obstacles, suffering arises, if you come from a place of distrust in yourself and the other, in the adult beside you and in the world, it's very difficult to not feel threatened. And people who feel threatened will move from a place of fear. Therefore, leaders who ignite fear in people will succeed at their whole operation. Look at what's happening in the United States.
100%.
Yeah.
So many things. I want to put a pin in that political thing for later because I have so many questions about that and thoughts about that. But a couple things that you brought up is just that our soul cannot be broken, and trust is so important as a young child. But if you do grow up in a family where you don't learn trust, there are ways to repair. And that's something that I found so hopeful in your book, is because you do talk about these traumas, but that we don't need to be broken by the big traumas or the little T's, as you call them, which happen, along the way, but rather, there's a way to repair, but we have to do the work. So I love that so much, because I think so often our traumas can weigh us down in life, and it can be very daunting to try and sort through these things that have happened. So what does that work look like? Like, what can we do to not bury the trauma, but like open it up, sort through it, and be able to like move forward?
You just in your question there was part of my answer, and it's about opening. There's a great Rainer Maria Rilke quote that says, "I want to unfold. Let there be no space inside me hold itself closed. For where I am closed, I am false. For where I am closed, I am false." What does this mean? The difference between trauma, between suffering, which is part of life, we just have to face it and learn to navigate it without feeling overwhelmed. The difference between suffering and trauma, this is Gabor Mate's work again, is constriction, closing in. We all have different parts of ourselves in ourselves. And there's something called the superego. I can only speak for me. My little refuge is doubt. When I'm afraid, when I'm unsure, I go into my little refuge and jungle of doubt. It's not going to work out. What am I going to do? How am I going to solve this? Am I good enough? Blah, 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 right? So when I was little, I had to go there in doubt to validate my pain. So if you're listening right now, what is your refuge? Is it your intensity through sports? Is it your love sickness, constantly looking for relationships? Is it your doubt? Is it your sense of control and intensity, right? What is your refuge? That is a protection mechanism to validate your pain. Think about it just for a second.
Yeah.
And then those are parts inside of you that keep you safe on the surface. Yeah. They've been there to keep you safe as a child. The voice of the adult that we have to have today is, sometimes I sit that part of me on another chair and I'll look at her and I'll be like, okay, I know you've been there to protect me. I want to save my parents from their pain. I couldn't do that. You were there to help me. Thank you. But I'm no longer that child anymore. I'm a grown woman. I can do this now. So you can leave. You can tell it to F off if you want, or you can be more gentle and say, listen, thank you for your role. Now that I'm more educated, that I'm well versed in emotional literacy and regulation, I understand. I can put words on my condition as a human being and say, I no longer need you. And when that voice rises, usually it will sound like a scolding parent or like it's harsh. It's never tender and soft, right? You can catch yourself talking to yourself that way in your inner conversation in yourself and say, thank you, but no, love, I don't need you anymore. You can go now. I'm a well-regulated person. I will face this myself, being patient and accepting of myself. Easier said than done.
I love that. I also love that you sometimes talk to yourself from another point of view, because it's yeah.
So Richard Schwartz, actually, who wrote No Bad Parts, who is the founder of Internal Family Systems, all great psychologists, a lot of them use it. He says, like, even for him, and he meets people who have, committed crimes, people that we would judge like this. And even experts on dehumanization that I interviewed in my own book, like David Livingstone Smith, they'll all tell you hatred stems from a need for deep connection that never took place.
Yes.
We are born to be loved and to love. Every single behavior that we adopt, under all the layers of the behavior, from criminal to, doubtful, is a desire to be seen, loved, and love, to be loved and loved. We express it in all torturous and tortured ways, but it is what it is. It is our human nature. So I think that everybody has to get this psychology course and this emotional regulation course in order to just pivot a little bit in their life, to have more tools, to actually think for even 5 minutes, wait a second, I don't have to carry all this shame, this guilt, this troubled past. It does not define me anymore. The science is now, exploding with the world neuroplasticity, how our capacity of our brains to rewire, readapt, so we can actually have more agency over ourselves and our lives, which is incredible because the brain learns by experience. So the more you repeat something, right? What do they say? Repetition is the mother of mastery, right? So we can master being the master of ourselves if we repeat kind, aware, conscious, and discerning behavior and inner conversation. We will not outthink our way out of stress. Cognitive behavioral therapy is great. Been there, done that. I still do it. Yeah. But it's not enough. We got to release the trauma from the body. This is why Bessel van der Kolk, for example, wrote The Body Keeps the Score, which is a great book. But our bodies are holding our traumas or our doubts or our fears. And if we don't move, if we don't let it out through our voices, and if we don't do somatic or breath work or meditation or more active breathing exercises, it's going to stay inside of us. So there's also EMDR, rapid eye movement desensitization. I can't say the word desensitization.
Yeah, that's right.
So there's many techniques that we can call on to and that we can integrate in our lives that are not this complicated. So if we were to teach, for example, to kids who have a little argument in daycare or in the beginning of primary school, how to regulate their nervous system using the breath. Then how do we teach teenagers before exams how to actually regulate their nervous system? And there's so many easy exercises, you can just pull down on your earlobes with your index fingers and pull the ears down and look from left to right and have deep breaths for a couple of seconds and hold your gaze for 30 seconds on one side and 30 seconds on the other and relax your jaw. There's so many easy, integrated ways to touch your own human body and come into contact with who you are to regulate your nervous system. So this is not cuckoo, woohoo, new age. It's actually proved by science and it works.
I love even the exercise that you give in your book, the tapping, which I had never heard of.
Love it.
Changed my life.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
It takes a minute. You want to do it?
Yes, let's do it.
We're just going to tell people to have a comfortable seat and to root your sitting bones into your chair. Just make sure your spine is standing upright, that you're not curved in or too much curved out. And that you relax your jaw, relax your jaw even more. You can even massage it for 5-10 seconds. We hold so much tension in the jaw. You can open your mouth to massage on both sides and see the tension that you hold there. And even under the cheeks here, sinuses under the cheeks here. Oh, it can be so tense. And what we're going to do next while you do this is that I'm going to show you how to do the tapping technique, which is simply a technique to kind of bypass the nervous system and tell your brain everything is okay. So as you sit here, make sure that your belly is well extended when you inhale. Don't try to control your breath. Take your two hands and put them up on the top of your head. And with your fingers, more towards your forehead a little bit more. Yeah, perfect. Just start tapping. You're just going to feel a little tap, tap, tap. And where does your mind go when you do this? Can we take one deep inhale through the nose and exhale it out the mouth? Let it out with some noise. And then you're going to take both hands and tap right between your eyebrows, on top of the eyebrows. So right between your eyebrows, on top of the eyebrows, that little space. Tap there. And this is not a moment for thinking, it's just a moment for sensing. So whatever thought arises, just let them go. Let them be. They're not who you are, they're just thoughts. And then you're going to come to the temples and tap on the sides of the temples. You can keep your eyes open if it's uncomfortable to have your eye closed, but I like them closed. And from here, we're going to take both hands and go under the eyes. Like really on that bone under the eye. Try to feel the bone under the eye. Yeah, that's it. And then you're going to take your dominant hand. For me, it's the right. You're going to place the other hand on your thigh. You're going to come under the nose. Tap, tap, tap. Deep, long breaths. Don't try to control. It's about letting go. Take the same hand under the chin and tap under the mouth, on the chin. Not under the chin, sorry, under the lower lip, on the chin. And finally, take your two hands again and tap under the collarbones on each side, under the collarbones on each side. And lastly, side ribs under the armpits. You can go like this, or if it's more comfortable, I find it better to do it like this. It's more comfortable when you cross over. And just take these last 8-9 seconds for yourself. Tap there. And now put both hands on your thighs and just see how you feel. No need to name or judge, just see how you feel. In 1 minute or more, what did you just create inside your body? So for me, there's at least a 10% stress release. It could be 1, it could be 20, it could be 30. But just to do this for 1.5 minutes,
Totally.
right?
Yes.
You're going to get into an argument with your lover, with your teenager, with your coworker. Go in the bathroom, go in your bedroom. I don't care. Go hide yourself somewhere and just breathe and do the tapping or whatever, tools that you might have in your life. There are so many. And it really just sets a new tone where you feel less bothered by the outside world because you came into your inside world.
Totally. Oh, I love it. It makes me feel so good and so calm, no matter what the state of mind
Me too.
before it,
Me too.
I want to talk about like emotions and feelings because we've touched on that a little bit, but emotional literacy is such a big thing that you talk about. And you have a conversation with Dr. Gordon Neufeld.
Yeah.
He said, there's too much emphasis on trying to control emotion instead of making space for emotion. One of the biggest mistakes we've made is the construct of self-regulation, because what they need is space to feel. They need safe relationships to feel. Granted, he's talking in relation to adolescence, but we kind of all need that, right? Like we need to learn to give ourselves space for emotion. And he says on the next page that emotion has purpose. And that was just such a big moment for me when I read that, because it does have purpose. Our body is trying to tell us something by the emotion that we have, and we have to listen to it. Instead of repressing these emotions, we have to create space and like let that moment be. So can you talk about that? Because that was a big moment. I loved reading that section.
Yeah, that's huge. And I love how you presented it. So two things. So emotion can also be kind of like felt as E/motion, right? Is like we shouldn't suppress our emotions because there are our life and our inner world in motion, right? They are an expression of a sensation first. So for example, if you're going to get mad, I mean, for me, I'm feeling it, right here, my throat will become constricted. Maybe my face will get flushed, right? I'm angry. So when you feel this, you have to sit with it and say, hey, I'm really angry, man. I'm really getting angry right now. I'm feeling a knot in my throat. I feel like fire in my face. So you're catching the body sensation first. Then it's something called CPR. So you're catching it. Catch, pause. Okay, I know I'm getting really wired up here. I feel like slapping somebody or screaming. Fine. Happens to every human. Don't worry about it. Just not going to do it. So catch, pause, repair. Okay, I'm going to come into my inner world. I'm going to repair this. I don't need to scream at that person. I don't need to hit somebody in order to make my point come forward or my emotion. I'm getting angry because I feel unseen. I'm getting angry because I feel abandoned in the way that my partner just talked to me or my coworker ignored me. It's re-triggering our childhood bond of attachments. It's re-triggering are wounds that keep following us unless we look at them. So here's the thing. Gordon Neufeld talks about safety. Without emotional safety, it's game over. We cannot get anywhere without emotional safety. So we can create that safety within our body, but remember that safety is not just the absence of a threat. It's the presence of connection. Right?
Yeah.
So peace is not just the absence of noise. It's the presence of harmony.
I love that.
So those are good metaphors to use because it's not just about getting away from danger. It's about creating a harbor of sustenance and self-regulation that can allow you to deal with the rest. So let's say there is a threat and you're in a war zone, right? Actually, Gordon Neufeld was called by teachers while this war is going on in Ukraine, asking, what do we do with the kids? The little ones, the 4, 5, 6-year-olds, they're in distress. And he said, take the curriculum, put it out to the side for a while, let the children play without structure. Playfulness and safety go together. When a mammal stops playing, usually it's because they're sick. When a kid stops playing, they're sick. When an adult, you and me, stop playing, usually something's off. And very, very serious humans who do not play, be very careful, take a step back.
Yes. Yes.
Our capacity for playfulness, and this is not just playing Scrabble or cards or, a board game. It's being mischievous in the best way possible, making each other laugh, connecting eye to eye, rolling, tickling, hiding, whatever it is, how you want to express it. This can be expressed through personal relationships, through sexual relationships, through intimate friendships. It doesn't have to be romantic love. It can express between a child and a parent, between co-workers. This aspect of playfulness creates safety. And in organizations or on a set or in schools, if we don't integrate play more, we will not give ourselves the bigger chances of regulating as groups. So it's really, really, really important that we allow ourselves the space to feel, to see what's happening in our bodies when we feel, to catch it, to pause, and to repair. That's our CPR. That's our new oxygen mask.
Oh God, I love that so much. And I was just about to bring up the playfulness because I love that so much. Because sometimes when you have these conversations about feelings and emotions, people think that it's so serious, but you constantly come back to this playfulness.
Yeah.
And I am such a goofy, lighthearted person in real life too. And it's so fun to be like, I'll have an emotional expression of my feelings, and then 5 seconds later, poking fun at myself for those things, and it just lightens the whole moment. It's like we don't
absolutely
so much to our ego. We can have a moment and be sad and cry and be overwhelmed, and then 2 seconds later be like, yeah, that was, and just joke about it, make light of it.
Yeah, that's tough to do when you don't feel safe, right?
Yes, but I think that's a product of feeling safe.
Exactly.
You're around. Yeah.
Exactly. Playfulness is it's a product of feeling safe, but it can also create safety, which is fascinating, right? So there's like a double usage, as we say in French.
Yeah, I love it so much. I want to talk about something too, which just kind of goes hand in hand with this, but when you were talking to the relationship expert, John Gray, you talk about what to do when a child is throwing a tantrum, and you write, you go slow, you're attentive, you make eye contact, you touch them, hold them, you speak slowly, you make them feel safe, which is what we were just talking about, how imperative this safety is. And I know that we speak about that in terms of a child having a tantrum, but shouldn't we also soothe adults in that same way? I just wonder why we don't. Is it because we're afraid of that level of intimacy with adults? Because I would love to be soothed like that. Is that bad? I don't know.
Correct me, but us as adults, we all still have an active child that throws tantrums. Come on. We all do in our own ways. And that same child needs to be cared for and validated and loved. The thing is that as an adult, we can be more aware of how we get there, and we can offer it to ourselves too. Mm-hmm. So yes, I think that we live in a fast-paced life that doesn't allow for space, terrain, container to slow the F down.
Mm-hmm.
My dad would always tell me in great Quebec French, but would also always tell me, Soph, stop running, you're going backwards. And I was like, shush, he doesn't know what he's talking about. I was a teenager. Yeah. Today, I lost him 5 months ago, and bless his soul that somehow he's hearing me. If we don't slow down, we can't talk the language of love. It's that simple. Whether you're in an argument with a lover, whether you are incarnating love, whether you are trying to help somebody calm a child, you'll never be able to calm a child if you're like, it's okay, don't worry about it. It's okay.
Right.
We have to slow down. And the quality and the necessity for emotional regulation is slowing down. When I have gone through, therapy with a partner, the one thing that we're told is, first of all, you better have like time in front of you, because it's going to take at least 15 minutes for your brain to understand that you're in a safe place. And you're going to give 15 minutes to your partner to talk without intervening, criticizing, or suggestion.
Wow.
We can only repair one nervous system at a time. Apart from when you're hugging, like a 30-second hug where it's just like to create regulation, it's incredible because you'll feel your heartbeat and your breathing pattern get, into this symbiosis of a dance with your friend or your lover or your child. But if you're trying to get out of an argument or understand somebody else's position, and this is the art of diplomacy too, right, on the political spectrum, is to be able to listen eye to eye without criticizing, suggesting anything for at least 15 minutes while the other is talking. Do we take that time? Do we? No, we don't.
We do
like
not.
The kids are waiting. My paper's due. I have to do this at work, and we don't take the time. But everything and the secret sauce is in slowing down.
Totally. Well, I was just going to say, I think that one of the real stars of your book is your son, who suggests that same thing.
He would be laughing right now because he's 17 years old and he's trying to make music and he's playing basketball and, he wants to do it all and he's going fast, but he's the one. Somehow, maybe I gave him something as a mother, that they integrated. Because when I did ask him, what is the language of love? What is the rhythm of love? He did tell me slow, and I was like,
that's amazing. Yeah. That must have been a proud mom moment where you're like,
very.
For a teenage child to say something like that, that's pretty remarkable. And
like, don't get me wrong. Like, we irritated each other the next hour, but it's okay.
That's right. That's okay, because then we learn how to repair. We do CPR, and we're back to normal.
That's it.
Something I wanted to ask under the conversation of emotion, what do you do if you are in a relationship with somebody who maybe doesn't speak the same emotional language as you or doesn't feel comfortable expressing their emotions? I can't tell you how often my friends will have these conversations where there is a rupture in their relationship, whatever that may be. But because their partner is either unwilling to talk about emotions or don't feel comfortable talking about emotions, it makes that rupture difficult to repair and move through. So what do we do in that moment? If we're doing our own work, how do we get somebody else to kind of do their own work?
That's the tough one, right? Remain curious. Mm-hmm. Remain curious and patient. Sometimes they don't want to talk about the emotion, but you could say, what does this bring up? I'm curious. I just want to understand you more. You don't need to tell me more about how you're feeling, but what does it bring up? Or what are you feeling in your body right now? What can I do to make you feel safer or better understood in this moment? Tell me what to do. Tell me what you need. I still practice this art. I'll have a tendency to want to solve the situation, to want to tell my teenager, well, no. You don't need to be stressed before your exam because you know that you'll be doing well because you studied enough. No. I understand that you're stressed. It's totally legitimate. I remember feeling that way too. Tell me more. Like, where do you feel you're stressed? And like, I don't know. you can gauge the situation, but instead of trying to solve the problem, just pay more attention and be more curious, I would say.
I love that curiosity thing because you also talk in the book about how our past is so much a part of our present, right? So if you're like, what does this bring up? You might actually uncover something else that happened in his or her life that might shed light on what's happening in this moment. And then you're better informed and can communicate about that particular rupture. And it might shed light on the rupture that you're dealing with in this moment. So I love that, the curiosity thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it takes patience, because I think most couples will have difficulty moving forward because not everybody's evolving at the same pace. But if you are cognizant and aware enough of your childhood wound that you keep carrying, if you find out that your lover or your friend keeps going to the abandonment wound, and anything you say, they feel like, well, you don't love me anymore, or like, well, then we have to quit, right? Or whatever it is. Well, if you know that they feel always abandoned, you could try with your language and with your actions to reassure them. Listen, we're arguing right now. I'm not going anywhere. I'm here for you. Just that. Like, I remember being asked sometimes in difficult moments, somebody putting a hand on my arm and saying, how do you truly feel? Like, it's not easy what you're going through. And I'm like,
Yes.
wait, I'm just going to blow up and start crying now,
Totally. Well, that's the soothing that we all want, like the touch and the feeling seen and heard. And yeah.
Give me the warm, milk bottle. Take me in your arms.
Me too. I am not much different than a child. I'm like, give me that attention and soothing.
Yeah.
Wait, some of this just reminded me of your really fascinating conversation with Liz Plank about the patriarchy. This blew my mind. We always think about how damaging the patriarchy is to women, goes without saying, and how it has benefited men. But she says, and I want to quote this because it was so fascinating. She says that she, quote, wasn't aware that the men who were hurting the women around her had been hurt by the patriarchy, and that men are the first victims of the patriarchy, and then they end up committing violence to themselves and to each other. Blew my mind. Makes total sense. So what is our part? Like, what part do we play in helping, I don't want to say fix, but like helping nurture this situation? What do we do?
I think it goes back to their child inside of them, and it comes back to safety again. When men feel that they have to perform, lead, dominate, show strength through everything, they're not allowed safely to be who they are, because we all have fragile parts that don't need to be in control and don't need to lead and don't need to overperform. And our definition of success is really flawed in our society too, because it's seen more as a recognition than as a contribution. So we have damaged the psyches of boys by telling them to man up and not leave space for sadness, for example. One of the greatest lessons I've learned in the past years is that one of the most important emotions to let rise and feel is sadness.
Yes.
We have 3 types of tears. The first ones are basal, just to like keep the eye wet. The second ones are reflex tears, which will just like, you'll create more liquid in your eye if the wind comes or a foreign object, for example. And finally, there's emotional tears. When chemists analyze the content of the tears, they're very different from one another. And only the emotional tears contain stress hormones, which means that crying allows for the human body to detoxify and to create a sense of relief. I will not go any further by naming names, but I will tell you that a very famous family member of a very famous political person who ignites a lot of fear in people told me that they don't cry in their family. And I was in shock. And when I heard that, I wanted to cry.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't believe, how do you go through a lifetime without crying? And people who work with teenagers, like Gordon Neufeld in my book, Closer Together, he'll tell you, sadness is the most important emotion to be able to release and let go and live. That's why teenagers have that angst and they listen to sad music and they cry and it's so important. It is the poetry of solitude.
Yeah. Yes.
Here's the problem. When we don't live the poetry and our right of poetry to solitude, we get hijacked into loneliness.
Mm.
Very different. Very two different ball games here. So if we don't allow ourselves to feel what it feels to be human by crying and releasing and detoxifying our mind and our hearts and our bodies, we get stuck and constricting and closing in, which is the definition of trauma instead of suffering, very different. And then it's very tough to open up. So this is crucial, crucial, crucial human work that we have to do and let go of.
Totally.
Yeah.
I so identify with that feeling of the crying. It's so interesting to hear that there's stress hormones because when I cry, I am somebody who's willing, like I am very happy to shed the tears and I don't care. I like that about myself. But it's so interesting how like 2 minutes later, you do feel like this wave of relief. And then you're actually able to deal with whatever issue or problem is in front of you more readily because that stress it's gone. Like your body has released it. I mean, yeah.
It's that simple. It's that much of a neurochemical imperative. Yeah.
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 Well, I think in that conversation it was so interesting because she said that like basically in the last 10 or so years, women have been given permission by society to express their masculine energy, right? And she's hoping that the next wave of feminist activism leads to men leaning into their feminine energy. And it's interesting because in the book, you talk a lot about how even as a young child, you lived in both those worlds. Like you felt that, but it wasn't always accepted, right? Like,
I mean, I think in my generation, I'm turning 50 this year. It's like, be a go-getter, go out there. Girls can do anything. You know, Madonna was a role model for me in different views. But then it was like, but don't dance that way because, something's going to happen to you at the end of the night. Or, be a go-getter, but, don't be like a guy. Come on. Like you're so masculine. Excuse me, So we had to dance between those polar opposites that are actually integral parts of who we are. And they're not that opposites, they're complementary. Totally. So like the yin and the yang, it just goes together. So as we have fragmented communities, we have fragmented individuals, and we have fragmented the natural elements of light and darkness and masculinity and femininity all together. And we feel all over the place because we've put each other into different pieces when we've lost our wholeness through all of this. So there's a reason why dysregulated emotional, men who are angry and frustrated and blaming the outside world for their frustrations. Yes, because of course there are outside events that can be very frustrating, but it comes from a place of not knowing how to regulate themselves, not knowing that their inner child is in distress and not feeling safe, not knowing how to regulate it, and feeling threatened by the difference of others. There's whole political movements based on this, social movements, war movements based on this. And again, when we come back to the core, hatred stems from, and division stems from a deep need for nourishment and human connection that didn't take place.
oh my God. So many good things. I just want to check our time so I'm not okay. One last question because I know I have like 4 minutes. Okay, I just want to talk about that with the political thing really fast because I think we know we live in a very polarized world right now and it's scary. You write at one point that a fixed mind is a dangerous mind, and you say it can distort the truth to fit its own comfort or discomfort zones and can become a living and powerful threat, not only to our own emotional well-being, but also to the world at large. A fixed mind is harsh, fearful, aggressive, conspiracy-driven. So I totally agree with all of that. But what do you do in this environment right now where on both sides, like our political climate is very divisive, but it feels like the divisiveness is less about the political differences and more that each side feels like they're morally superior in some ways.
Mhm. Mhm.
But what do you
Absolutely.
do? But what do you do if the other actually is dangerous and promoting ideas that aren't great? Like, for example, the current administration has recently said that they're only going to acknowledge two genders and two sexes. I think that's actually very damaging, very scary, because I know that in the United States, at least 1.2 million people identify as being non-binary. So how do we not have a fixed mind, remain open, but also hold on to the truth of this moment where everybody deserves to be accepted, seen, heard, felt, all the things?
Yeah, that's a big question. And I did hear the incredible speech that not a priestess, but the reverend the
Yes,
reverend gave, yeah. So
yes.
I'm very aware of the situation that you're talking about here. A fixed mindset is a dangerous one because we're going to go back to the constriction, right? A fixed mindset is a dangerous one because they are closed parts that are false. They do not represent who we are. So the only way to counteract this distance between us, and I'm going to use the title of my book, is to come closer together. It's to actually come into conversation with somebody that has an opposite point of view that we do, without getting too fired up, right? Remember, you could say, I'm angry right now. I disagree with you. I feel even threatened by what you're saying. But I'm curious, can you tell me more? And if you ask more without being threatening to the other person, you'll discover human parts of even the most, sometimes what can seem evil people. That can be a little bit of a light into understanding where they move from. Does it excuse their behavior? No. But if we could, in some ways, in schools, initiate debate so that people can come closer and find common ground, or at least some kind of deeper curiosity of why people suffer and why they hold the positions that they hold on to, we will create less division with that curiosity. Even diplomacy today, we don't come face to face, right? There's less traveling. COVID cost, exacerbated that as well. But even in COVID, you'll see that there was a mental health crisis before that. And I've been talking about this for 20 years. I could see it. But COVID exacerbated it because we became more isolated. That physical and mental isolation will only deepen our division between human beings. So whether you're an actress, whether you're a teacher, whether you work on, in the public transit, I don't know what it is that you do in life, or you're a writer or whatever it is. Our responsibility is to expose ourselves, and I do this, and it's even difficult for me, to situations where you disagree with somebody, and to remain curious to see, what can I learn from this? Tell me more about you, because I'm having such a hard time understanding why you believe what you do. Can you tell me more?
Yeah.
I want to understand you better. Just that is like, oh, there's a little bit of a softening, right? A little bit of a safer container there, space. The relationship is not just you and me, it's the space in between, and it's charged with our energy.
Yes, yes. That's God, I love that so much. And it's like you're saying, we have to be coming closer together because the way that our environment is set up right now is people aren't going into the workplace as often. We're communicating over Instagram and other social media. We're not as close together, but we have
Yeah.
to come closer together to have these conversations and remain curious. And it's not always easy. It can be hard.
And if you want, we could end on this, which is fascinating, is that today Kate and I were talking, right?
Yeah.
And the first thing that you picked up on when I went on screen, do you know what it is?
No.
In a, how do you say it in English? Un centième de millième de seconde. It's like in a millisecond,
Yeah.
you picked up on my facial cues. So if I had come onto the screen like this,
Yeah.
You would have picked up on that, and right away you would have been like, oh, wait a second.
Mhm.
So we pick up on facial expressions so quickly as human beings, and we do it all the time, whether we're walking on the street, meeting with somebody. So believe me or not, this is fascinating, but science proves it to us that if you are dysregulated, Kate, if you came into this interview and you're feeling alerted and you're in your sympathetic nervous system, in your alert mode, if I have a neutral face on, you could interpret my neutral face as aggressive and threatening because you are in your alert mode.
Yes.
So we're now learning that most people, half of the population is in their sympathetic nervous system for too long. We're supposed to be dancing between our alert mode and our rest and digest mode, between our sympathetic and our parasympathetic nervous system. Everybody has a nervous system. Everybody has those two branches. But because of the way we live, our bodies are doing all the stuff that they're supposed to be doing, with our alarm bells ringing and our anxiety up the roof and our nervousness and our incapacity to deal with the uncertainty, because we're living in abnormal circumstances. But our bodies are doing the right thing. So we're pathologizing a lot of our troubles in the name of, we're sick, but we're not. We're responding to abnormal circumstances. So for anybody listening today, if you're going through something, if you know somebody who is, just be a little bit more curious. Try to find out where the lack of safety is coming from, how long they've been carrying that for, and know that you're never, ever, ever alone on this path. We're here today to prove that there are other hundreds, thousands, and I would say millions of people, because I've had the opportunity and the luck to meet so many of our fellow human beings on the path, and there's a lot of good humans out there who want to do good. So we have to continue to trust. Without trust, there's nothing.
I love that. That makes me a little emotional, actually. I love that sentiment. I can't think of a better way to end. Thank you so much. We need all of that positivity and light and curiosity and patience and just constant pursuit of happiness and togetherness and closeness.
It doesn't have to be constant happiness. This is what we've been wronged with. It's just moments where we find content, that we're not geared towards pleasure. I want more. That's okay once in a while, no problem. But it's about content and just being like, hey, I'm lucky for what I have. And I actually, right now in this moment, I'm happy. I'm at peace, I'm safe. So from my trusting heart to yours, I wish you the best. And I hope that we meet on the path at some point.
I hope so. Thank you so much. Thank you.